Now, in a setback for Donald Trump, a U.S. federal court has blocked most of his sweeping tariffs from going into effect. That boosted markets this Thursday, even as the White House appealed against the decision by, quote, unelected judges. Trump also went on the defensive after being called a chicken for repeatedly backing off of his high tariff threats. One journalist coined it taco trade. For Trump, always chickens out. Here's more of what the president had to say.
I gave the European Union a 50% tax tariff, and they called up and they said, please, let's meet right now. Please, let's meet right now. And I said, okay, I'll give you till June 9. I actually asked them, I said, what's the date? Because they weren't willing to meet. And after I did what I did, they said, we'll meet anytime you want. And we have an end date of July 9th. You call that chickening out?
We're going to talk more about this now with France 24's Douglas Herbert, who joins me on set. Doug, let's get back to this court ruling on Trump's tariffs. I mean, what prompted it, and what does it mean concretely for this tariff scheme going forward?
What prompted it, first of all, is both a coalition of states, 12 states in the U.S., and several small businesses basically brought separate complaints, lawsuits essentially, against Donald Trump's tariff scheme on the grounds that they basically argued that the president had overstepped his authority as president of the United States. As a result, they were hit, both the states and the businesses, with very steep financial hits, losses, and that's why they brought it to court. Donald Trump himself had invoked, as we alluded to, this rare emergency powers legislation. It was passed in 1977. It's called the Emergency Economic Powers Act. That's a mouthful. What it basically does is, in the event of a national emergency, a president has executive authority to take certain actions, measures. It talks specifically about trade embargoes. It talks about sanctions. Nowhere in the Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977 are tariffs mentioned. Never before had a president of the United States tried to invoke this act in order to impose the tariffs. But that is exactly what Donald Trump did on April 2nd. We have referred to these tariffs, this whole scheme, as using tariffs as a cudgel, in a sense, to beat nations over the head, to level the playing field, putting America first agenda sort of front and center. And he wanted to negotiate trade deals state by state. Basically, what the bipartisan panel, I stress bipartisan, these were judges both appointed by Republicans, including under the Reagan administration, and Democrats, this judges, on the U.S. Court International Trade. It's a federal court. They basically said, Donald Trump, you can't do this. You do not have the executive authority. If you were going to try to impose tariffs of this nature, Congress has to act in some way. Congress has to have a voice under the Constitution of the United States. But also, the government is supposed to compile reports. It's supposed to give time for the public to comment and give feedback. None of that was done. This was a unilateral, full-throttle president charging ahead without depending on any of those checks and balances, some of which are in the Constitution itself. The judges basically cried foul. Once again, a bipartisan panel, including Republicans.
Now, opponents of Trump's approach to tariffs feel vindicated in some way because of this. I mean, we'll see where it goes. But could this embolden them and others to resist to some of other Trump's policies?
Can it embolden them? Absolutely. Is it likely to? Absolutely. One of the sort of overarching questions that have been asked from, the outset of the Trump presidency on January 20th is the extent to which the checks and balances system in America is still resilient, the extent to which the courts can still push back, the extent to which judges will continue to act independently and not let political pressure or intimidation or political considerations impose on their rulings and agenda. And you could argue that this is a textbook case of the judges. They said time and again during the arguments brought by the Justice Department, the Trump lawyers in this case, it's not for us to decide on how to address what Trump considers a national emergency, this MAGA agenda emergency. That's not our issue. Our issue is to address the constitutional legality of what the president is doing. We are not policymakers. We are judges. We are here to enforce the rule of law in this country. And this is where you could say, okay, the pushback in certain cases is working. Sure, we still have the flooding the zone, Jeannie. Sure, we still have a lot of people scared that some things are going to get through. But it shows that that at least now, in the early days of the Trump presidency, there is pushback and on a very key effective policy. And one sign that the Trump administration is sweating a little bit is Stephen Miller, a top advisor to Donald Trump, a top White House official, called this a judicial coup, this decision. He said the judicial coup is out of control. And a Democratic senator, Ron Wyden is his name, he's from Oregon, the state of Oregon, he basically said that this scheme depended on mangling the U.S. Constitution. So clearly the Democrats are also cheering. Everyone is going to breathe a sigh of relief. Anyone who was against this tariff scheme, anyone is breathing a sigh of relief that there still is a judicial check on what some see as executive overreach, this president overstepping his authority.
Douglas Herbert, thanks so much.